I want to welcome you on behalf of Wesley-Nexis, which I serve as president. We have several other of our board members here tonight. Kent Weaver in the back and Rick Barr, who's here on the panel. We heard reference in the presentation to John Polkinghorne, who most of you know spent 25 years as a theoretical physicist in UK, and then became a priest in the Anglican Church and continues to write widely in the field of religion and science. And in this book called Exploring Reality, one of many, he makes the following statements. Science explores one level of reality. That is the natural world, and that means the universe and all that is in it, but cannot reach the personal meaning. We are creatures who search for understanding, and for that we need something in addition to, beyond science.
It's like having a automobile manufactured and set in front of you, and then you wonder what it's for. And it seems to me that that is kind of the role of religion in looking at the scientific product that is before us, the world that is before us, or life that is before us, and then we have to somehow or other energize that vehicle, and that is the challenge of faith. For me, I think we have that kind of partnership between science and faith and religion. And we will do better, of course, if we learn how to work with each other instead of being at odds with each other.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a response right to the question. So let me turn to some of the panelists. Would you agree with Dr. Polkinghorne?
Of course, I can't just say yes or no. So by definition, science can't, at least alone or definitively, address meaning. Okay, that's not what it's about. That's not what science does. At the same time, I can also think of many people who wouldn't describe themselves as religious, who still think deeply and see meaning to their life and a purpose in their life. So I would say that it really depends on what you really need are some set of metaphysical assumptions that probably grow out of your own experiences that lead you to this meaning. But it doesn't necessarily, I don't think all people would be happy with defining that as religion. So I'll just put that in.
All right, Tom.
Philosophy gives you insights that science alone cannot, or that religion alone cannot. And then I studied history of science and found that history gave me insights that the other disciplines did not. So it's not just a sort of duality of knowledge, like, okay, if I really know my science well and then I read scripture, I'm set, I've got all my bases covered. I'd want to encourage people to push beyond saying there's these like two different books of understanding. There's science and there's the religious expression, but no, there's many ways, and our different academic disciplines that we pursue can help us explore this from many angles and not just two.
Okay, well, I would say to answer Polkinghorne's question, I'd say no, I don't agree with it. The reason that I would say that is that science is young yet. We have only been at it running full tilt for maybe 25 or 50 years. And so maybe half of all scientists that have ever lived are alive today. So we've got 1,000, 1,000,000, 1 billion years in front of us. I think we'll learn a little bit more over that period of time. So when Polkinghorne says we don't understand a lot, and we can't because science doesn't explain it, I think we're not done yet. I think he undersells what science can do, and religion is not done yet either. We've been remembering and writing down things for a few thousand years, but there's thousands or millions or billions of years in front. So,
well, I'm not sure I understand a lot of the terms that Polkinghorne uses, and I didn't feel that way when I read his book, but to the extent I do, I don't agree with it at all. And it's not just because I'm constitutionally disagreeable. It's because my religious perspective, if you will, is suffused with science I cannot imagine separating the two into as if they were dichotomous, as well as some of the other ways of experiencing life and the universe and everything about us that Tom referred to. And I want to give you a quote from a rabbi who is not interested, at least didn't used to be, in science and religion. Instead, he is a practicing Kabbalist. And this is what he says: "As a religious person, I believe that the evolution of species is the greatest sacred drama of all time. It is a tale, perhaps the tale, in which the divine waits to be discovered. It dwarfs all the other narratives, memories, and images, including our own." When he talks about our own, he's referring to the heritage of the Jewish people in which Christians share. And I subscribe to that perspective. And I also subscribe to what John said about how much more there is to do. I'm not as optimistic as he, for a variety of reasons. One of them being that the human being seems to have a propensity for self-destruction, which is appalling. And we need to marshal absolutely everything we can in religion, science, philosophy, art, and music to leach that out of the human being. So I don't agree with John Polkinghorne, and I often don't agree with myself. But this I agree with.
I remember going to visit the Museum of Natural History in New York when I was about 8, and seeing the bones on the walls and the patterns of evolution. And my parents read to me and my sister from books of biography about Galileo and Darwin when we were about that age. So I thought, what an amazing, wonderful exploration of the world that they were starting. And I didn't know that I'd be able to participate in that, but I just thought it was so fantastic. And science was really important, really kind of scary. It was a little even dangerous to be a scientist and come up with something that other people didn't want to hear right yet. But I thought that's about the most important mystery of anything. And when I found out that I could actually work on it, that was really exciting.
What is the best method or ways that we can witness to conservative Christian friends that mainstream scientific theories of evolution and cosmology are indeed compatible with the Christian faith?
Number one, I think we have to love people. We have to do what the faith community does best, and that is to love and to care for our brothers and sisters who do not seem to be able to come as far, maybe as some of the rest of us have, are appreciating what science does. The idea of building fences between us, between believers and those who don't believe in the same ways we do, I don't think it's a very good idea for any of us, no matter what denomination we are or what background we may share. I think the matter of relating our lives to those who disagree with us, to those who are angry at us, to those who are not accepting of it, I think that capacity to appreciate the world that they may be looking at, and may be feeling and running from, or trying to control, that we have quite a challenge before us.
Well, I have no experience particularly trying to do this in person, but I would say people like to be respected, and they like people who are interested in them. And so, you know, if I come along and say, I'm a scientist, I know everything, and I want to tell you about it, I can tell that isn't going to work.
For people in conservative Christian communities, their real biggest concern is not with how long did it take for life to be created and this kind of thing, but is how do you explain death and suffering and evil? Because in the biblical account, the world was created perfect, and then humans sin, and that brought all kinds of trouble into the world. And it's that theological conundrum that is the biggest hurdle. And so just acknowledging that, even if we don't have a good answer for it, I think is a good step in the conversation.
We don't have the equivalent of conservative Christians, except in an infinitesimal corner of the Jewish world. You understand the evolution of the human species and so forth through, and ask about death and evil. We share that. It saddens us enormously that there is death, and we all have to deal with death using the same tools, regardless of the religious background that we come from. Some of those tools are made available to some of us through some scientific disciplines. Others from experience with trying to comfort one another. And we all share that, so I think we can reach out to people who are frightened by science, or who think that, who have a reaction to science, which is because it doesn't deal with how do we handle death, is to say, that's right, science can explain to us the process of death, but there are other techniques we need to help one another confront death, including our own.
Now you know why we can address George as rabbi. A rabbi is a teacher, and every time I sit at the feet of Rabbi George or any rabbi, I am grateful for what I am taught. I have another question here that I'd like for you, Rabbi George, to start off with. How can we speak about a personal God in the context of a God of the universe?
With great difficulty. I've been trained in philosophy and, not incidentally, in theology, including Christian theology. And when I think about God, I don't think of God as a person. The anthropomorphisms in the Hebrew Bible are beautiful, and they convey many important messages, but they don't really fit my understanding of the world, the whole of it. But when I respond to the universe or everything, or the ethical commands of my tradition, I respond personally, and that's my responsibility. So I think, as usual, I can't really begin to answer the question you asked. It's much too difficult. I'll refer you to my friend the Kabbalist. He probably does a better job.
I was so intrigued by George's answer that I forgot the question.
Does it make sense to you to think about God in personal terms when we have a God of the universe?
That's too hard a question, really, but it seems to me that each of us has a feeling and then a sort of a relationship to each other and to the rest of the universe that we think of in religious terms. And so that part of it's personal to us, to each of us. But I sure don't picture a God that looks like a guy coming out of a cloud creating me with his finger like Michelangelo showed. This God is not a guy sitting up on a cloud dangling his feet over. So my guess, the closest thing I can get is that we're all creating our experience of the universe as we go along, and maybe we're all God's representatives.
I'd like to make the claim that God's an accommodationist, and by that I mean that God, if the creator of the universe is going to be personal with us, God has to take those steps to be personal to us. And in that respect, that's how I think some sort of personal understanding of God could be there if God makes it possible. I think from a Christian theology standpoint, that's what the incarnation is all about. But having some sort of personal understanding of the creator of the universe, that's God's business, and we can get access to that. I think that, again, that's the essence of the incarnation.
As my understanding of the natural world grows through science, and I allow that to have an impact on how I think about God, my ideas about God change as well. And I think what your question really speaks to is one of the questions in science and religion, which is how does God act in nature? And I do believe in a creator God, and it's God's matter. So I don't expect in my lifetime to have the answer to your question. Yet my entire life's activity, including what I do as a scientist or what I try to learn from science, again, I'm learning more and more about God's matter, which in that sense, that's adding to my relationship with whatever the divine is. I don't ever expect to be able to define it. And I think it's a relationship that's open-ended. You know, is it personal? I'm not a person, I say for myself, the only kind of prayer that I usually utter is one of thanksgiving, one of gratitude. And at the end of the day, I feel like that's the best I can do.
So I've been asked to dismiss for the benediction, so perhaps we can just take a moment to reflect on what we have heard and witnessed and shared tonight, taking away our questions of faith, not necessarily the answers that we have heard. But let us resolve to praise God in our own way as Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Let us resolve not to elevate doctrine over love. Let us not elevate belief over faith. Let us go forth in peace. Go now in peace. Go now with God's peace everywhere, everywhen. Thank you.